What is up, Honey Badger Nation? This is John Kitchens. Man, we're here for episode 59 of Expert Mentors Live. Super excited for today's episode. We've got Mr. Joel Perso hanging out with us, and we're definitely going to be talking about designing the team to accomplish your goals. Honestly, I don't think there's anybody any better that can have this conversation with us today. And just super excited to be able to have this conversation and bring you guys some value and some knowledge on really, how to go about designing and building the team to help you accomplish your goals. We're going to answer some questions. We're going to take questions from the Q&A from the chat. So be sure to utilize it. We're going to cover, a lot of other things, and I'm super excited to jump in. So Joel, say hello to the Honey Badger Nation.
Hey, what's up, Honey Badgers? Happy to be here.
Yeah. Super excited. We're coming to you. We're coming to you live from what city are we in?
And we're in Heartland, Wisconsin today, just outside Milwaukee.
We are sitting across the street from their office, a little coffee shop. Got a big old cup of coffee, and what does it actually say? Dream. Yeah, nothing better than that right there, right? Dream. I love it. So very, very cool. Awesome. So we are going to really jump right in, and because there's a lot of ground to cover when it comes to really talking about the organizational structure and really designing and building the team. Joel, kind of unpack that for everybody, and really what we talk about when we say organizational structure. What does that kind of mean? And we can definitely start unpacking it from that point.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, it's a big topic. It's a big question, and I think oftentimes it's a pretty misunderstood. I think when people hear organizational structure, organizational design, I think where most people's minds go is to an organizational chart. And that's not what we're talking about. That may or may not be a component of your structure, but that's not what we're talking about here. And it's a really important piece of the puzzle, because an organizational chart will lead you to design things the wrong way. And there's a lot of pitfalls with that. So at its most basic, an organizational structure is all about the functions that drive your business, not necessarily about specific people or even specific positions, but it's really about the functions that drive your business. And I love the way you titled this episode, because it really is all about accomplishing your goals. So we're talking about structure, but a really important piece of your structure is you've got to have some groundwork laid already. And so there's key pieces that I feel like we kind of have to talk about before you start with structure. So like one of the most important pieces is your structure follows your strategy. So strategy has to come first. You design your organization, you design the structure after you're clear on your strategy. Going deeper on that, your strategy has to come after your goals. The strategy should be designed to help you accomplish your goals, right?
Okay.
The goals should be designed to help you achieve or pursue your vision, right? So I always talk about this when the subject comes up, because I think it's so important. If you haven't done the groundwork in your team, in your company, even if it's just yourself as an agent, if you haven't done the groundwork of identifying your core values, of identifying the purpose, why does your business exist? Why are you doing it? If you haven't done the groundwork of getting super clear on what the vision is, then you can't effectively goal set, because where are you going that you're trying to set goals to get, right?
Absolutely.
And then you can't effectively make a strategy because you're not clear on your goals. So that groundwork has to be laid, I think, before even the conversation of what does a structure look like and how do I do it, before we even get there. So I want to start out with that is if you haven't done that work yet, that's where you need to start. There's nobody better than John for helping you get clear on how that process looks. Read the book Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. Read Beyond Entrepreneurship by Jim Collins. Those books have great processes, frameworks that you can follow to lay that groundwork before now you start talking about how do I structure my team or my business.
100%. And I would say Beyond Entrepreneurship is probably the most foundational read that you can for your business. Chapter two is on vision, and Collins, how he breaks down vision, and it's purpose, mission, values. but not in that order, right? It starts with values, then comes your purpose, then it identifies the mission that we're on. And that's chapter 2. And chapter 1 is leadership. And that's chapter 1 for a reason. So definitely, if you don't have a copy of it, it's Beyond Entrepreneurship. It's not even Jim Collins. He's pinned it James Collins.
James, right.
And it's a blue book, and it's a must have in your library if you're really serious about growing your organization, your business. And you nailed it right there. It really starts with identifying who you are at your core. What is the purpose? What is the dream? What is it that we're really wanting to accomplish? And once we know what that dream, that cause is, in the crazy thing, and this is where a lot of people get hung up, is they try to do things and create the team around the people that they have closest to them, but it's not congruent in alignment to what it is they want to accomplish. And a lot of it is because they just haven't taken the time, like you said, to do the groundwork.
Absolutely.
To get clear on where they want to go. And it's a must. You will flounder, I guess, is the best way to look at it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like you're on a boat and nobody's in control of the rudder, right? It's just doing whatever it wants. And whichever way the wind is blowing is the direction that you end up going. And we see it. I had conversations earlier today that people are the boat's just being blown by the wind. And so we've really got to take that time to put in the work to get clear where we want to go. If not, you're just going to be a ship lost at sea. And who knows if you're going to even be able to survive it. So that was a great point. So we know, okay, we do the foundation, we get clear on the dream, our sole purpose, what it is that we're wanting to accomplish. And then the next step is we get clear on our current mission, right? What we're wanting to attack.
Right.
And man, I haven't even had a chance to talk to you about this, is that I forget where I heard it. It might've been in Brave New Work, but they were talking about, I didn't realize that this is how Facebook looks at it. Facebook looks at, where do we want to be 3 decades from now? And what are we doing in this next 6 months?
I love it.
And then when they get to 6 months, they go, where do we want to be in 3 decades? Knowing what we know now, where do we want to be in 3 decades? And what are we doing in the next 6 months? And when you have that kind of thinking, and then from that point, we say we agree on, hey, we're all bought in, this is where we want to be 3 decades from now, and this is what we want to do in the next 6 months. Then what?
Yeah, great question. So many points that easy to get hung up on here. So I think when you're clear on the mission, what's that 6 months, what's that year, whatever that looks like. I think next step is breaking it down into whatever kind of goals make sense for your organization, for how fast you move. For most companies and teams, that looks like we're going to have annual goals, quarterly goals, and then break that down monthly. So I think nailing goal setting is super important. That could probably be a whole separate episode. Nailing goal setting and knowing that, when I say nailing it, what I mean is if we hit these goals, we will be moving towards this mission. We will be on track to hit the big goals in the times that we set. So I think goal setting is so important. And then also it's strategy. So break it down for real estate world. Our goal, our mission is to grow our team to from 40 to 100 transactions. Let's just say that. So that's going to be our big goal over the next year. Well, let's break that down into smaller goals that we can attack every month, every week. And then how are we going to do it? So the strategy piece is really important. I feel like just before we get to structure is the strategy. So does that look like we ramp up our buyer lead generation? Does that look like we hire an ISA to build a listing pillar? What are the kind of the big pieces we need to implement in our business? So getting strategy right. Now that we have our strategy right, now we start talking about structure.
Perfect. So let's say that we've come to that agreement and really nailed that plan. We feel good about it. We're all in agreement, from a leadership capacity. then where does the conversation turn?
Yeah, in agreement. And then I think the key first step in designing a structure for any company, any team, and we mentioned this right at the beginning, it's getting clear on the functions, the core functions that drive success in your business.
Yep.
So if that, again, using the real estate team, which will make sense to everybody listening, using that analogy, well, you might have recruiting is a core function for your business if you need to be growing your agent count to hit your goals.
100%.
Obviously, there's sales and marketing as core functions.
Yep.
I believe in any real estate team, training has to be a core function because it's a key piece of retention and it's a key piece of getting people up to speed if you do have to replace. But beyond that, it could look really different. So in my team, one of our core functions was lead conversion. We were very heavy on buyer lead generation.
Yep.
And so our conversion metrics were super important. That was a core function for us. That might not be the case for all teams, right? So it's identifying what are the core functions that exist in your business. And then if you need to add any, if you're trying to add a pillar of business that's going to be foundational to your business, that's one of your core functions. So we designed the structure of the company around those core functions. And not on the people or the titles or the positions. That all comes next. But identifying the core functions is the first step of the structure.
100%. Hopefully you guys caught that. That is, that's where most people mess this up, is that they look at the faces and the people around them and they try to say, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And it's backwards. You've got to spend the time on what are the key driving functions. What are the things, the main hats that somebody is going to wear to drive the business forward in pursuit of the current mission that we're on, the current objective, the current goal that's in alignment, like what we talked about, in alignment to where we want this thing to be big picture, right? Where we want it to be in the example of Facebook, where we want to be in 3 decades. And so that's where they miss it. That's where they miss it. So when you break it down, you look at the main core functions in any business, right? Before you look at what's the driving factor in the business of how you're going to get there. Like Joel was talking about, their business. I mean, what you guys at the peak, what, 70 million?
Yeah, over 80, almost 400 transactions.
But their business was built on that particular lead gen piece, so they had to have that element in there. But for those of you doing, 5 million in production, there are still functions that are no different than doing 80 plus million, right? And one is obviously head of company. There's a key function there. Somebody has to be in charge. And this is the one too that I see a lot running into with husband and wife teams, family teams, is that, hey, we're both going to be, co-founder, co-CEOs, right? We're both going to run this company. We're going to be king and queen of the hill or whatever it is. And we'll talk a little bit about the importance of why that doesn't work. So you've got the head of company, you've got sales, you've got marketing, you've got operations, and you've got finance, right? So you've got that. And if you're a solopreneur kicking it, man, you're in all of those buckets. Mm-hmm. And you have to, from an allocation of time, how much is going to get allocated, where we start to look at resource. That's a little bit different, but we can talk about how to get that off in a little bit. But I just want you guys to all understand that the main core key functions, and then within that, those key core functions come kind of the sub functions, like what Joel was talking about, where recruiting lives, right? Is it there is a form of recruiting as marketing. There's also a form of recruiting that's sales, but somebody has to own it. And so having that key element in there, somebody on the sales side, marketing side, owning conversion, and kind of holding marketing and sales together, right? Kind of the glue for the two. Yeah. So identifying that is key when it comes to when you start to look at all of those sub functions. So somebody they've gone through, they've looked at all the functions, and they've kind of laid out and identified, man, these are the main things that we've got to have to propel our business forward over the X number time frame. And I want to make a key point here is that we can't get hung up thinking that this is the way it's going to be forever.
Yeah. Yep.
Because if the business, as we're designing the function, here's the thing with organizational structure that we have to, that needs to be a takeaway for everybody that you need to get your head around. It's designed. It can be whatever the heck you want it to be. That's the cool thing. Now there are key functions. There's like we pointed out, but it can be structured however you want it. And so as business is today, and that's why we do strategy every 90 days, right? Because this is part of the process that we have to go through at every time. And so like part of strategy, like what Joel was talking about, is that we revisit, the vision, we revisit, the big picture, we revisit, the near future, we revisit, hey, where are we at? And this is a great time for you guys because this is almost halftime, right? And are we on pace to hit our goals for 2019 or are we not? But whatever it is, then we need to make those adjustments. Here's the new goal. And then let's look at the functions that we have to support the goal. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, anything else that you want to add on kind of laying out that functional part? Now, keep in mind, there's no names in the boxes. There's no names. There's no faces. And this is hard. Because a lot of us, and we've all been victim of this, is that, we start to design it based upon the people that we have around us instead of designing it how it should be designed to hit the goal. Yeah. It's hard. Yep. It's so dang hard. Anything else there that you want to add to on the functional side?
Yeah, I think, touching on what you just said, it's super key to have the functions because, there could be 4 or 5, definitely no more than 8 or 9 core functions in your business. They'll have sub-functions, but those functions may not change no matter how big you get. You might have 500 people in the sales department. That's still just one box. That's one function. Now the structure goes deeper. It's more complicated. The function is the core piece. And so it's so important for that reason, so it can scale. The other reason it's important is in a team, a real estate team, in a small company, in a growing company, there might be people who are filling roles or have responsibilities across functions. Yep. And that's just kind of the reality of a fast growing team. Like you said, when you're on your own, yep, you're everything. Then you make a hire, you make that key hire. As the team grows, as the business grows, sure, those people might have multiple functions or some cross functionality. So knowing the functions first is so key because you can't say, well, you're the marketing manager. Well, that might be the title we decided for you, but you might have responsibilities in many functions. People call it, we're wearing all the hats, right? Yeah. So I don't know if it's possible to avoid some stage of business when you're growing fast that you're wearing multiple hats. I don't think it probably is. I haven't seen it. But that's why it has to be based on the function and not the people, because you might be doing multiple functions or involved in multiple functions at various points. And that will help you get clear on the next hires, which I'm pretty sure we'll talk about that at some point. But yeah, to wrap up, I guess, starting with the functions, it's identify the functions, get clear on the purpose of that function. So sales might be the function. What's the purpose? Will drive revenue. And then when you're clear on the purpose, you have to have a KPI with it. So however you call it, whatever you call your metrics, KPIs, but there has to be a key or maybe a few key performance indicators. How are you going to measure the success of that function?
That's it, 100%. How do you know if that function is successful or not? I'm pretty sure you're going to get into agreements versus expectations. I want you to tell the story because I use you as the example of understanding agreements versus expectations. How many times did you have to hear that before it clicked?
Oh man, 6 or 7
at least.
And then a couple times of you telling me directly, like after I heard it. So this was a game-changing leadership life principle across relationships, business, everything. And the basics of the principle is do you have an agreement or do you have an expectation? So the way it played out in this story is I had heard this going to these masterminds on coaching calls with John, agreements versus expectations. Do you have an agreement with that employee for what their performance needs to look like? Or do you just have expectations of what it's, and then they might have very different expectations. So it was me hearing that over and over again, and then complaining to John about how I was unhappy with some team members' performance and how I thought I was perfectly reasonable what my expectations were and that they should just understand it. And he just had to just kind of call me out, pretty hard, I think, of there's no agreement here. You just had an expectation that wasn't communicated properly to that employee. So of course they didn't meet my expectations, right? If they
never will.
You never will. Yeah, they have theirs, and I probably wasn't meeting their expectations as a leader. So we didn't have an agreement on what things were supposed to look like, so that we could avoid that friction and those miscommunications and just missed expectations because we didn't have the agreement. So yeah, that's been a game changer.
It's probably one of the most game-changing takeaways that you can take for the quality of your life, understanding this one principle alone. Like if you take anything away from this call, if you just take away agreements versus expectations, your life will be on a whole nother level. The thing is that one, we can never assume intelligence for another human being, right? We never want to assume that they know, that they get this. This is how it is. The other is that everybody's definition or viewpoint or perspective of success is different than the next. My definition of success in a particular function or a particular area is different than Joel's, and vice versa. And when you just leave that up to chance, and that's where people get sideways and get frustrated with people. I always give the example like with Holly, because it carries over into relationships. And it's easy to convey this if you understand it from a relationship perspective. Then it because it carries over and it translates right into the business relationship. It's relationships in general. Is that I'll catch myself getting upset and getting pissed off at something that she's doing or not doing, and I'll have to catch myself. I'll be like, You're an idiot. Like, I'm an idiot. Why am I getting upset? Like, we don't even have an agreement on this. This is 100% on me, 100-0 on me, and allowing to get upset when we haven't even had the conversation to even talk about what is success. Because here's the thing, is as human beings, we want to do good. You have to get through that, right? And you may feel jaded from some experience in the past. And the only reason that things become jaded from an experience in the past is because you didn't take ownership of that relationship and the communication and set an agreement in place. And when you leave it up to expectation, you're going to be let down 100% of the time. And so you have to get clear on, like what Joel was saying with the KPIs, what is success that we have to agree upon. And talk through that, because whatever issue, whatever topic we want to talk about right here, my interpretation, just like I said, is going to be different than Joel's, but we need to come to an agreement of what we believe success for this to be at this given time.
Right.
This given time, because an agreement going back to easy to carry over with your with your spouse in a particular area is potentially not the same if you throw kids into the mix, right?
Right.
It changes. So we got to have that shot. We got to re-talk through, hey, what is success at this point? So it's the same as your team grows, and you add team members. Maybe in sales, maybe now that agreement has changed a little bit. That now you're responsible. You're not able to hit sales goals, whatever the thing is. That's why it's so important to make sure that you're sitting down. That's why we love the 90-day rhythm. The 90-day, getting into the 90-day cycle of going through strategy, revisiting our goals, taking a look at current reality, recalibrating, and then setting down and revisiting the functions and making sure that we've got the right functions in place to hit the goal. Not the right people, the right functions in place. Then we can switch to people.
Yep. Yep. And that's exactly the order. Once you have the function, you're clear on the purpose of that function, you're clear on the KPIs. Now we're starting to talk about who's going to be accountable for that function. And that is different than, so here's where it gets back to you getting tripped up if you're talking about who first, is who's going to be accountable for that function does not necessarily mean that's a whole position unto itself. A name goes in that box, but that name might also be in other boxes too right now, right?
Yep.
So it doesn't have to be one person for each function or each sub-function, and it probably can't be early on in a business or if you're growing fast. So when you've nailed the KPIs, you've nailed the purpose, you've nailed the function, now we're talking about not whose job that is necessarily, but who's accountable for it, who's responsible for it. And that's a really important conversation. And yeah, exactly where agreements and expectations come into play. So here, I'll give another example in our business. And I said it before, our marketing manager. Well, we did things the wrong way. We did them backwards. Who do we have on board already? Now let's fill it. And what we ended up with, because we started with the people instead of the functions, was when we needed cross functionality or people to step out, that's not my job.
Right.
I'm the marketing manager. You hired me to do marketing. As opposed to, this might be your primary function, your primary accountability, but we also need you here
to wear this hat as well.
To wear this hat as well, which might be, in a fast growing business, might be 3-4. If you're head of company in the beginning, it's a lot of them, but can't overstate that enough. Just has to start with the function. Then you work your way down to who's responsible for it.
And then I'm going to confuse you guys a little bit here. I'm going to pull a Gary V and really come from the other side of the fence on this one. And you listen to Jim Collins, you need to YouTube it, jump on YouTube, and it's who before what? Who before what? What he's talking about is that you've got to get the right who on the bus. And so do they align to the values? Do they believe in the purpose? Do they want to, commit to what it is in the agreement to be successful for that function? And so, yes, who before what, but you've got to know what the what's are, the functions to hit the desired goal, okay? So it is 100% critical to make sure that you've got the right value, people that are in alignment to the value, that can get whatever job done. That's the definition of an A player. They get the job done 90% of the time, given the given pay range that you're able to afford, and they also align to your core values. That's the definition of an A player. And so the who is probably more important than anything else. But you got to know the goal, right? Everything, it's a system, it's a process. Everything is a process. And the process, right things, right order, bigger dream, bigger vision. I think this is the example I love to give. And this ties so true to NAEA and why we made the move and the things that we did with the Kinderis brokerage in Dallas. And we were, everything that we were doing was in alignment to the bigger overall impact of NAEA. Okay. And so this is pre-EXP days. Mm-hmm. The whole dream, the whole purpose of NAEA was to impact as many real estate agents' lives as we possibly can, right? So think about this. The dream for you is the end of the movie, right? But it doesn't, the path that you get to the end of the movie, the script and the narrative can change as many times as you want it to.
Right.
So think about it with what we did, right? The guys, it still hasn't changed. The bigger purpose of NAEA in Jay Kinder and Michael Reese has not changed. It is still 100% the same.
One big fire.
One big fire.
Yep.
Right?
Love it.
You were sitting in Aspen when Jay had that conversation, right?
Yep.
So, we were sitting in Aspen at Mastermind. I don't even know what year it was. Maybe the last time.
2015.
2015. So we're sitting in Aspen and just out, I mean, something that Jay had been thinking about. So you got to understand, you know, with Jay, he's always been thinking about the, you know, and this all came to be coming out of Mastermind. Mastermind was started in January of 2012. Actually, it was kicked off and announced coming out of EGS in October or November of 2011, announced it. We had our first Mastermind event in Aspen of 2012. And Jay's whole thought process from that point was, how can we all work together, right? That's how a partner came to be, right? That's why we started, you know, we started partner, we started looking at ways to where we could all work together. And it's always been one big fire. How can we impact more lives and really come together and make a ding in the real estate universe, right? That's, if you go back, you look at any of the vision statements, any of the purpose statements for NAEA, you'll see that, man, it hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed. Yep.
The end of the movie hasn't changed, but the script and the narrative is being rewritten as we go. And that's what I want you guys to get. It's being rewritten, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming back full circle to who you have on board is just as important. Okay. So you have your who, and then, okay, we still know the end of the movie, but we've got to rewrite this script a little bit. Hey, we're going to shut down the brokerage, but we're going to align everything to EXP. So the script and the narrative is going to change, but the outcome that we're desiring is still the same. We're trying to have a bigger ding and make an impact, which I 100% believe we're still, the fire is growing brighter and brighter every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so that impact is being felt. And so the who, but now the goals have changed. Right? The goals have changed, so the functions have changed.
Right. Which may mean that the strategy is changing a little bit, which may mean that the structure needs to change a little bit. So
100%.
And this is a question you get a lot, so that's a good transition. Is when should we be doing this process? When should we be talking about structure? When should we be talking about how to design this? And so, I mean, one is if you've never done it before, for sure.
Yep.
So if you're just either you built your team in kind of the millionaire real estate agent way, where you got too busy and you brought an admin or then buyer's agents, and you never stopped to do that because the goal wasn't maybe build a team. It was just how do I keep going? How do I keep growing?
And maintain some sanity in my life.
Yeah. Go to the next level. Yeah, or get some freedom back for sure. So, I mean, that's maybe you've never done it before. Maybe the team's growing really fast right now. Maybe you're wondering about how EXP fits into all of this. So when should you be doing this? Definitely if you've never done it before, without a doubt. Number two is, and this might be common, this is what happened to us when we joined EXP, is when the strategy changes significantly, the structure changed. And for us, that was a huge overhaul.
Talk about that. I think that'll give some context for everybody on the call, because I think, you know, people coming on board and they're like, man, this is how it was, but this is how it is. How do I get, you know, it feels wobbly, doesn't feel right. So
Sure.
Talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. So we joined EXP almost exactly a year ago with our small independent brokerage. We joined primarily for the revenue share opportunities. I was really excited about working with John more closely, getting to see all the honey badgers again, all the old mastermind friends again, which I love. But we also have another business that we're really focused on that needs more time and attention. So EXP for us became a way that we might be able to keep the real estate team, maybe even grow it, develop passive income through revenue share, but free us up with the time to pursue our other business opportunities. So it was a huge strategy change for us from growing, from just having a brokerage that we want to grow into kind of a powerful but local boutique brand, to saying our real estate brand isn't as important to us, but our revenue share group is over the next 10 years. Which, by the way, the timelines are super important. So we said in 5 years, we want to be here with revenue share. In 10 years, we want to be here with revenue share.
Key takeaway.
So that was a big piece of how it affected our strategy.
Yep.
So we said, well, the things that have to happen right now is we have to have more time to devote to our other business. So for me, that meant I'm no longer the broker. So I don't have broker review compliance and liability responsibilities anymore. But it also meant that we now have a vehicle through EXP to save time, have our business be less dependent on every transaction because we can pursue our growth through revenue share. So it was a big strategy change for us, and we ended up redesigning our structure completely to where we
talk through that with them.
Yeah, definitely. So we got really clear on what we want our lives to look like, which is a piece of our goal setting, right? So we've done this in the past, but we said we don't want to manage and train brand new agents. So that was a big piece of our previous company when we grew to 400 units, was bringing brand new agents on, having incredible training, leads, and support, and getting them up to 5 million in production in their first full year in the business. That was our goal, and we got really good at it. But that's a lot of time, right? So we said in our new structure here, we want it to be much less work and time to manage. We want to bring on the kind of people who want some support, but they're motivated. They're going to come to us when they need something, so we don't have to be focused checking up on them, making sure they're doing the things. If they want accountability, we'll give it to them. So these are the kind of people we want to work with as we grow our team here. Well, those kind of people aren't paying a 50% split, and we're not providing the value that we could ever possibly charge a 50% split. So we restructured things to, they get a baseline level of support and coaching from us. They are EXP agents on their own at an 80-20 split. And we basically collect a small percentage of the first deal they do every month, which covers office space expenses and the amount of time we're putting in for coaching. The reason we did that is we didn't want to recreate the teams we had built before. Not that there was anything wrong. I mean, there was definitely things wrong with them, but not challenging that model necessarily, just saying we don't want to do that again. It's not what we want for our businesses. So what we want is kind of what we have with the honey badgers on our local scale here. We want a network, an alliance of growth-minded agents who just want a little bit extra support. Maybe they want a little bit extra culture. They don't want to be 100% on their own, or maybe they're not ready for it. Well, let's partner together, and we'll provide that extra support, coaching, training, direction, accountability, but on a much smaller scale, and help you grow. In the end game, because the opportunity is so big, the end game is you should be on your own with EXP. It's the biggest opportunity that has ever existed in real estate.
If you guys, we did a call with Joel, Kinder, and myself. It was when was it, the end of last year or whatever we did it. Yeah. I had a sunny background. I was in California, I remember, but that was how you framed that. And for those of you that understand sports, you'll appreciate this, because as soon as I heard it, I shared it with people that I know that are sports fanatics, and they're like, "Oh, I love that." Share kind of your guys' thought process as it relates, from a sports analogy.
Yeah, sure. So when my business partner Seth and I were talking about what is this new kind of team look like for us in light of our move to EXP and our focus on VRX, our other company. We said, here, again, we identified, here's what we don't want to do, which is spend a ton of time managing newer agents or trying to motivate or hold accountable newer or less productive or just less motivated agents is what we don't want to do. Here's the kind of person we want on with us.
Yep.
But ultimately, the team should be a stopping point for the bigger opportunity, which is being on your own in EXP. And so in our conversation, Seth said, it's a farm system. And so we've stuck with that. It's a farm system. If you're not quite ready or you don't quite want to yet be 100% on your own, which can be intimidating, especially with a lot of people who are coming from teams or coming from bigger offices, that can be intimidating. So spend a year with us or 2 years with us. We're going to help you grow. We're going to point you in the right direction. We're going to provide a lot of value. But the end game is you're on your own with EXP, because our strategy is not doing more real estate deals or recruiting more team members. It's building our revenue share group. That doesn't have to be everybody's strategy, obviously. A lot of people join EXP, and we know this because of the tools to grow your business, your real estate business. A lot of people get into EXP aren't even thinking about revenue share at the beginning. We were, so it was a key piece of our strategy.
Sure.
So we said our team now isn't really a team. It's a network. It's an alliance. It's a farm system. Come join us. Spend a year growing with us, and then chase that bigger opportunity, which is you being on your own with EXP.
100%. You know, I mean, throughout all the years and you know, all the teams and everything that I've had the opportunity to work with and you know, the hoods of their business to be able to look under, the number one fundamental flaw in the team model is that talent comes out the top. Always has, always will. And that was another one of the things that, you know, that's why we were in pursuit. We went down the partner path and then, you know, really opened our eyes to EXP. We're like, they nailed it. They nailed the model because instead of being fearful and just waiting for that phone call that you're going to get saying, you know, hey, Joel, we need to sit down. We need to go to lunch. I'm going to talk to you about something. Hey, you know, I'm going to go out on my own. You know, I appreciate everything you guys did for me over the last 5 years and I made more money. You changed my life. I'm going to go do it on my own. See you later. Right. So
there's a key piece, because we always talked about this in the mastermind group. Your reaction when that happens is, they're ungrateful. They never would have got here to this point without me, right?
Right.
But they're not ungrateful. They just want the same opportunity that we wanted when we started the team, right? 100%. They wanted a bigger opportunity, and that's why that's the misalignment in the team model is because of that. If you hire people who grow, they will outgrow your team.
Duh.
If you hire people who don't grow, well, then your business doesn't grow, right?
Exactly.
So you can have successful teams. I'm not saying it's impossible. Of course, there's tons of people who are crushing it. There's a lot of things I think you have to have in place. You have to have a great culture. You have to have real value for what you're charging in the splits. I think you have to have a great structure. You have to have great leadership. And those things can take you a really long way into agent retention. People may not want to leave because they love it. And that's awesome. We know that we've got honey badgers who have that kind of culture.
Sure. Absolutely.
But
they've got great leadership, like you said. They've got great leadership in place.
Great leadership, great cultures. Yeah. But that's a key. And for me, that was a key. They're not ungrateful. They just want the biggest opportunity. And how can I fault them for that? Because I did too.
You know, man, we talk about it all the time. The whole, the greatest skill that we can develop as leaders moving forward is the emotional intelligence. And one of the 5 foundational pieces of emotional intelligence is empathy and putting yourself in their shoes. So that example that Joel just gave you guys is a huge takeaway that, if you understand empathy and you put yourself in their shoes, they are grateful, like you changed their life, right? And if they are a grower, which should be a value of yours, it's a value of mine. I know it's a value of Joel's, like that day should come. You should not be surprised. Like you should encourage it. And I think with the model and what, you want to encourage it, right? You want to create that career path. You want to try to set some milestones for them to leave you off of the team, out of the farm system into the major leagues. And so it really is a mindset shift. It's coming from an abundance mindset instead of a scarcity mindset. And just embracing that really helps with that.
And it's hard. I mean, it's hard to have that mindset if they're leaving and going off on their own outside of something like EXP. You are no longer getting any value from them, and it's hard to cultivate that mindset that you're genuinely happy for them. You take pride in how you helped them and kind of sent them on your way. It's hard to do that because that's hurting your business.
Yeah.
No team leaders have all 10 of their agents doing the same amount of business, right? They have 80-20. They have the top 2 or 3 people who are doing 80% of the business, and those are the people who are hard to keep. So it's not one person leaving, it's maybe 20% of your production, maybe 30% of your production. And what I love about EXP and solving that alignment is they can go now. I can be genuinely happy for them. It might hurt my production, but it builds my network. The more successful they become, the better it is. The better it is for all of us. The better it is for our network. And I can't remember who said this first, but I loved it, and I wish I would have heard it 5 years ago. If you hang on as a team leader, if you hang on too long, what should have been a graduation becomes a divorce. And we saw that time and again as people came to us and said, hey, I need to know what's next for me. And we said, oh, we've got contract to close and we're going to help you do more business, but we're not going to change your split, right? We're still going to be 50% and you're doing the math that you're paying us $200,000 this year.
And I think, we're talking about designing. I think if you're intentional in designing that, you design that graduation.
Yeah.
So you can calculate it, you can formulate it, you can plan for it, you can prepare for it inside of the model to where it's not a kicking the balls. Right. And, that sickening feeling and you're like, oh, then you become reactive back to, default back to defensive mode. And I got to go back into production. Right. And, but if you're strategic and you strategically plan that graduation, it's coming and that way you understand the secondary impact, the ripple effect when they do graduate, what's going to happen to the business and to the business model. You can prepare for it.
Right.
And, that's great. I was thinking of something as you were talking. I was like, man, what a freaking walking contradiction we've always been. And it's like, man, we're grateful when they leave, as long as they leave a better person. And then you're like, why did they leave me? And it's like, it's just, I don't know, it's funny. Cool. All right. So we've got, understanding that the who kind of, maybe let's stitch a couple more, kind of connect the dots a little bit more for them. So we've talked about the process. It's a process, guys. You got to understand that systems and processes get you in the game. If you don't have systems and processes, you will not survive 100%. And so you have to embrace that. And so the process here, the sequential order, right? You have the big dream. Where we're going to be 3 decades from now. What do we do in the next 6 months? What do we do in the next 3 months? What's the goal? Then understanding the functions to support the goal, and then taking your who's, and either they can fill a function or they can't, or some functions short. Who do we got to go get? And you make that determination. So I think that's kind of right where we're at. What else do we want to help connect the dots for everybody with this and designing their team?
Yeah. Thought of one last point, and then we'll move on to this.
No, good.
That I missed. We got sidetracked on we were talking about when to do it, when to talk about structure, when to design. We said, if there's been a major change in strategy, if you've never done it before, and then the other one, because this has happened to us before too. If there's a serious misalignment in your business, you might need to take a look at the structure. If you're the head of the company and you're the bottleneck, if you're slowing down the company's growth because everything has to run through you, that would be a good sign of a misalignment.
Yep.
If you have high turnover rates, especially with leadership, that could be a sign of misalignment. If you got talented people and great tools and great pieces and you're just not hitting your goals, there might be a misalignment there that structure could help. So those are the big 3. If you've never done it before, if there's a big change in strategy or if there's a misalignment in your business, it's worth taking a look at your structure and how your structure supports your strategy.
Great point.
So
great point. If you're stagnant, yeah, absolutely.
All right. So what was the new question again?
So we're here. We've got our who. We've plugged them into the functions. We understand agreements versus expectations. We've gone agreement in that function for that person for that given time frame. You got to keep in mind, just because it is this way now doesn't mean it's going to be this way forever. That's why you've got to revisit, and you've got to reestablish and recalibrate the agreement. The reason is that 90 days from now, you're not going to be the same person, and they're not going to be the same person as they are today. Different perspectives, different information is going to give us different clues to success. We're going to be wrong. We're going to be wrong a lot. And that's good, right? We're either winning or we're learning. And what did we learn to recalibrate the agreement? And it can be like, hey, we had a little bit of a friction here. Something was off. Where are we off in the agreement? I think, has the goal changed? Do we need to recalibrate like what Joel has given us? And so we're in that rhythm. We're at that point. Is there anything else kind of once we're there that is super, super important to pay attention to?
Yeah, there's a lot. And I mean, there's a reason we've in this call today, we're focusing a lot on the principles because the specifics are so dependent on your current business. They're dependent on your goals, your vision, so we've stayed away from things like, what's the first hire you should make, or is a buyer agent or a showing assistant, or, those types of things. We can get into all those things, one-on-one with anybody who wants to talk through them. Sure. But we've tried to keep it real principle focused here, intentionally, because if you learn the principles and you work on implementing and executing them, you'll come to the answers yourself, or we can talk through those. But I think, to bring it home a little bit, is the structure, a well-designed structure should help you execute. And that's ultimately the goal, is creating alignment in the business so you can execute. What do you need to do to be successful is you need to make good decisions, and then you need to execute quickly, right?
100%.
You can't execute quickly if there's a huge lack of clarity, because the structure is misaligned, or if there is no structure. And it may be hard to make decisions. Whose decision is that? Do we all need to be involved? You should share the above the water, below the water line, because that was a huge get for me. We just talked about this week.
I love that. So you made me think of one thing, and I said earlier that we would probably dive into, is that when you're going through and you're plugging people into the functions, you cannot have two names in the box. So we were talking about, husband and wife. Hey, we're going to be co-head of companies. That you're just setting yourself up for some heartaches and disappointment, going slow, right? Not making fast enough decisions. One person ultimately responsible. And the question to ask yourself is, if shit hit the fan in sales, who is ultimately responsible? If we don't execute on the strategy, at the end of the day, who is ultimately responsible? And that's how you determine who's in that box. Now, Joel might be ultimately responsible for us hitting our sales goals, but I may be wearing a hat within there that I'm responsible. So it's accountable and responsible for helping produce my numbers that impact the overall goal. But at the end of the day, if Joel has that hat on, then it's ultimately on him to make sure that we succeed, or that we get the right people on board to help us accomplish that outcome that we're after. But the above the waterline, below the waterline, and what happens is that in the beginning, we're making all of the decisions. And one of the hardest things for people to understand is to let go, right? And this becomes the delegation. This is where the bottlenecks happen, and they're not letting go. And so the mental model of above the waterline, below the waterline, is you have to establish within your organization what is the waterline of decisions being made, that if we took a shot below the waterline, it could be catastrophic and could sink the ship. Whereas if we make a decision and we take a shot and it's above the waterline, it's not going to impact the boat, right? It might not look pretty, we might have a hole in it, but it's not going to sink us. And so establishing whatever that is for your business. And I remember for us in the closing department, we had Tracy Combs in our closing department, as she's overseeing the whole closing department, is that we established a waterline of a dollar amount that we were okay, that, like, I don't need to make that decision is it a $500 decision or less. Tracy, you have the autonomy to make the decision, because guess what? Tracy, you are a core value fit. You understand the direction and the purpose that we're going, and the decisions you're going to make that you understand to be the best, are going to be in alignment of moving us in that direction. And it just creates speed. Now, if it's going to be more than 500, hey, we need to probably have a conversation on it. What else can we do? But if it was below 500, Tracy, make the damn decision. We got you. We trust you. We're going to come to the same conclusion that you would have came to. You've closed more transactions than almost anybody on the planet from a contract close standpoint. Make the decision. Yeah. Don't call me. Just go with it. I trust you. And you have to do that within your organization, where people feel autonomous so that they're able to make those decisions. But you've got to establish the waterline of, hey, we need to have a conversation. Hey, just make the decision. And they're gonna be wrong. They're gonna mess up here and there, but it was not done maliciously. It was done with the best of intent to solve the outcome based upon the situation and what their belief was at that time. Right. So that's how they learn too. If they mess it up, but it doesn't seem to show.
Yeah, I love that. That's been an awesome analogy to start thinking through with our team.
Yeah. So we're coming down to the home stretch here. If you guys have any questions or listening, with us on the call, throw it into the chat real quick. We'll try to get to it before the end of the hour. If you're catching this on the replay, watching it, man, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me at any time. Facebook, probably the easiest way, or you can go to johnkitchens.co, schedule a call, get on my calendar. Joel's everywhere, Facebook group, everywhere you can reach out to him. What are some of the final key points that we want to make sure that everybody, as we wrap up, that they take away?
Yeah, I think bringing it all together, we covered a lot of ground here today. We went all the way back to core values and vision and mission, strategy, structure, people. But I think to tie all those pieces together is these are discipline equals freedom type of things, because they take work. They take a lot of work. Like we've had strategy meetings where we said, I don't think we got that piece of our core values right. And I don't know if we should have kept that. I think we missed the goal. I think we set the wrong goal and it led us off course a little bit. I do think we have a misalignment in our business. Our structure is not right. I mean, these things happen. It's difficult. They take a lot of work and they're not easy. But there are great resources that you can follow. There's frameworks that are built and there's processes that you can follow. So you don't have to be kind of walking around in the dark with these things. There's still work, but there's great stuff out there. But the end game of all of these things is you have a business that's aligned. You have team members who are on the same page, who are pulling in the same direction. You have people who feel like they can make good decisions. And then you can execute faster. So it really is, this is a discipline equals freedom type of conversation, because you can move way faster when you do those legwork and you get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's up, Jeff? So amazing principles insight. Thank you. Tactical tools or resources or framework to keep focused on the in-game goals on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. Give a little extra context to when you're doing a lot of you're doing a lot of the functions and wearing a lot of the hats.
Yeah, great question. And it's a good rubber meets the road type of question. I think taking it all the way back, the core values should be a part of the daily conversation in your team or your company. People should use them when they are just talking to each other. We had one of our core values at our old team was think big, and that was part of the conversation. People would say, "Oh, I'm going after this, I'm going after this new thing, or I'm thinking about this, hey, think big." People would say, "Never stop learning." People would say, "Hey, 100-0, that was a core value." So I think that should be a part of the daily conversation, and that only comes from leadership and from you modeling that for your team. So, getting a lot of these things right takes care of some of this. But then, some stuff we didn't cover today that can come out of structure is, what does your meeting rhythm look like? Who needs to be meeting every day? Does that look like a daily huddle for your team? Does that look like a weekly check-in? Yep. Does that look like weekly one-on-ones? So whatever that meeting rhythm, how often is strategy happening? If your business is exploding, maybe quarterly strategy is too long to wait. You need to do it monthly. I remember Carlos German, when they switched their strategy to monthly, was awesome. And he helps me out a lot with that. Yep. So meeting rhythm is huge. How often is leadership meeting? And then, what does accountability look like within those functions? So reporting and communication structures are a piece of the structure. Yeah. Once you get down to who's accountable for those functions and who's ultimately responsible for executing on them, now how does the communication look? And as a team leader or owner or head of company, what are the things that you need to know every week or every month that you can make good decisions? So I know that's not super practical, but without knowing exactly what your business looks like, I would say focus on what does communication look like within your company? What's the meeting rhythm look like within your company? And then what does accountability look like within your company?
Spot on.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think too, what is keeping you up at night that you don't have visibility into, that you need to be able to see, to be able to free your mind up to stay focused on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, I think is another key thing. And a lot of where a lot of that falls is on the financial side, is people are kind of uncertain or they don't know, right? But when you create that visibility inside of your financials, then you're able to free your mind up knowing exactly where you're at financially. So now you can go play offense, and instead of being kind of in and out, not knowing what you need to do. And so that's just a good example. So what's keeping you up at night that you don't have visibility into, that you need to see to be able to make better decisions, free your mind up to be able to execute and focus on your highest leveraged activities that are going to drive the results forward. What is your metric for success? I think that's key. I think as just want to wrap with, you nailed communication rhythm. And this is the biggest thing for small teams that see each other every day. I always translate it back to husband and wife teams, or siblings or whatever. Just because you see somebody every day doesn't mean you communicate with them. Just because you talk doesn't mean that you're communicating. And so establish a communication rhythm to where everybody is getting on the same page on a consistent basis. That's why the daily huddles are important. That's why the end of the day reports are important. That's why, that deep dive into where we at priority wise, where we at marketing, where we at financial, where we at with our listings, where we at with our closings, to creating that visibility, that rhythm inside of your organization is critical to free your mind up, so you're not wondering, and with certainty, so you can act. That because we get paralyzed when we don't know, and so we get paralyzed, we stop, and we don't go forward. So usually that's a good point.
Yeah. So one last thing, Jeff, if for keeping the end goals, the big picture in mind on a daily and weekly basis, I would say number one, make sure it's really clear. Make sure it's exciting for your team. Make sure your team knows what it is, and then talk about it a lot.
Yeah, talk about it a lot. Hey, Jeff, so a couple things on that. If you're just trying to get your head around strategy, good strategy versus bad strategy is a good book. If you want a great framework on how to execute with strategy, I would say I would do Mastering the Rockefeller Habits before I did Scaling Up, and then I would dive into Traction. We've actually gravitated away from Vern's process with Scaling Up over to Gino Wickman's process with the DTO. And it's just easier, right? It's just simpler. And as we're getting pulled in many different directions, we need to keep it as simple as possible. But that's any other recommendation there for Jeff as a wrap?
Yeah, Beyond Entrepreneurship has a good framework too. And then for talking about meeting rhythm too, Death by Meeting, Patrick Lencioni is an awesome book.
Get the Advantage. He touches on it a little bit. Death by Meetings goes deeper with it. But The Advantage was a book that sat on our bookshelf for almost 2 years. Clay Mask, CEO of Infusionsoft, told us to read it for like a year straight, and we finally did. It's a game changer. So I would definitely say that. And then Brave New Work, Aaron Dignan. If you have not dove into Brave New Work, you need to do so. Jump on Gary Vee's podcast and find the podcast episode that he did with Aaron, and watch it and get the book, listen to it, get a hard copy. It's the direction where everything's going, and we'll definitely dial it in, Jeff. Cool, man. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. It was awesome.
Fun.
Thank you, guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.